Hi everyone! Today I'm going to do the unboxing of this Mossery package that I received recently. I ordered it online with a friend and I just was able to pick it up from her. Let's see how to open this. I see. So this is an insert that I got. I think this is a watercolor insert. Let me see if I can find the information. The Mossery Sketchbook watercolor paper. And then I got a cover for it, so I can put ones that I finished using into the cover. Or actually, never mind, it's not for this, it's for the actual book. I'll show you because I don't want the art to get dirty. Oh, this is very cutely wrapped. Oh, it's got a little note here. Oh, I don't think I was supposed to show that. Mosstober, and this is the cover I got. It's from the artist Kala. I really love her work. Let me see. This is one of the paintings that you can also find one of her videos on, and you can see how this painting was made. I particularly really love this water reflection and some of these light rays in here, and it's a very cute book. And, it's got an elastic here and a bookmark. Oh, I see. The bookmark is coming from the back. So this feels very nice. It's very soft, actually. It feels, I don't know how to describe this. It just feels very soft. It's got some resistance. It's not super smooth, and it's very matte, except for my name here. So let's put away the box. And we'll take a look at the inside. So first of all, I got this 2020 Mosstober prompt, and it's got the artwork of some of the artists. This is very nice. I plan to do this at some point. And then this is the book. I see. There is a slot in here. Not sure what it's for. Maybe you can put your name card or something, an exchange card here. And then it opens up, and this is where you insert the book. And the first page has a pocket. And then it's the mixed media sketchbook paper. Oh, I see. It's all the way the same paper. I was used to seeing online there were versions where you have a bunch of notes that you can take, but this version doesn't have anything. So let's see if I can take this out. This is the mixed media paper, and this is the watercolor paper. So I think I'm gonna use the mixed media one. I just wanted to check what it looks like. Is it easy to put in? Because this pocket is very large, I think it's pretty easy to put it back in. You just have to make sure that Just have to make sure it's well lined up into the inside, and then you take out this. Okay, great, it's back. Although I always find it kind of funny to have a wire-bound notebook with a note with this thing here, because I feel kind of funny. I guess I'm just not used to wire-bound notebooks. Okay, so let's try using this. So there's a pen loop here. So what to do here, put in the back cover, put in the front cover, slide the corners in, pull out the band from the opening. Ah, okay, I see. This is not necessary anymore. Okay, so it says put in the back first. Oops. It's a little easy to get stuck, it seems. Okay, so that part is in. Also trapped some dust. Okay, now the front. Okay. Very good. And then take out the band from here. And this. It's very nice. Okay. So now I think it would be a good time to test out the paper. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Okay, great. So let's open it. Oh, it's a little stuck here. Let's go to the back actually. I always like to test out my paper on the back. And there's a pen loop here. Let's see what pen can fit in here. How about a pencil? I mean, not really. I think it's better if you had a pen with like a clip so that it can sit properly. I have some other pens. Like for example, I have this fountain pen. Or I have these Pentel brush pens. Like for example, like this, that might be fine. And when you close it, true, and you have to, it just rests on the side, and then you'll be able to close it. It's pretty good. This elastic is not easy to come out. Okay, time to test the paper. Technically, if I test the paper and I don't like it, I could rip it out. That's, I guess, the good thing about having a wire bound. Okay, so let's test out watercolors first, because that's my go-to medium to use. So this is a Mission Gold watercolor set. I bought this from China, but it's a Korean brand. So let's put it here. Okay, and then let me grab my brushes. Where is my brush rest? Okay. And then we'll take my water jar, and obviously I cannot forget some paper towels, and then also put one on my hand. Always good to have water control. So let's try with these colors. Don't have to try every single color. I'm just gonna pick a few. So it seems decent at taking watercolor, at least for one layer. Let's see. We'll test a variety of different techniques and see how it does. Okay, let's zoom in and see how it looks. So while it's wet, it's got a sheen, and while it is dry, I guess that's just the texture of the paper. Looks quite normal. I don't see any issue with this. Let's try doing a larger wash. What color to use? Maybe this one. If you'll notice, I don't tend to clean my palette very much. I like to just use the same mixes, which will help me mix some grays. Okay, looks pretty smooth. Let's wait for it to dry, and then we'll do a small bar at the end as well, and we'll test some things with it. And then I want to test out layering as well, so go with the pale yellow. Is it still recording? Yes, that's good. So let's do a pale yellow here. Make it longer so that later when I layer different colors, we can see what the difference could be. Yeah, so it looks like for this, flat washes are pretty good, and you can still do gradients. It's not extremely the big difference between heavy color and areas with less color, but it's not bad. I'm sure if you layer multiple color on top of the existing when it's dry, you will be able to get a better result. This is currently still wet, and meanwhile let's try some other medium. This is the Pentel brush pen. I have two. One is a darker color and one is a lighter color, so we'll so this is the Pentel brush pen, but I also have this one I use for filling in if I'm doing a black and white piece. I tend to use this color. It's more of a gray color. But I also have fountain pens. This is 1.2. So this is actually a very thick fountain pen. You can see that the tip is flat, and that's why it releases a lot of ink. I also have this Platinum Preppy 0.5. So this one is a lot thinner, and then we can see what it looks like. So I can tell that there is a lot of feathering going on with the fountain pen. With the thick version, you can see it's really just feathering a lot. Actually, the Pentel brush pen is not as bad, but the other color, this other color I filled is using Noodler's black. I think I filled it with this color. And when diluted, it's a little bit, I can tell it's a little bit like not as smooth as I think it could have been. Yeah. Okay, now this is dry. Okay, this part is dry. We'll try layering. So I'm gonna put okay, so I layered one layer on top. I put a different color on top of that one as well. I really don't know if I can take 3 layers. It's looking unlikely at this stage. But we can try on this flat wash. Is it fully dried? Okay, what I'm gonna try is I'm gonna try to erase. I really don't think this paper can do it, but worth a try, right? Okay, so you can see it's peeling the paper already. Let me zoom in here. If you can tell, right here, as I was erasing, it was peeling up the paper. So definitely no scrubbing with this. But on the good part, this color here is very flat. It's definitely a flat wash, and you can achieve a flat wash. And then here, let me see. It's not fully dry, but it's somewhat dry. You can see it's peeling a little bit due to having multiple layers. The fibers have gotten loose. So I don't recommend doing a lot of layers with this paper with watercolor. And then you can see that the fountain pen is a little feathering out, and this is not very smooth with the ink that I filled on with the Noodler's ink, because I think both of these are fountain pen inks, while this pocket brush pen is a different type of ink, and it's the particle size is probably larger, so it's not seeping through. Now let's flip to the next page and see if any of it has leaked through. Not at all, so that's a good thing. Oh my god, my hands. So then let's see how well this color will flow. I'm going to put down some water here. And then I will fill it with color. Is it doing anything? Not really. It's not really doing much on this paper, but also it's because of the watercolor. I can tilt it a little bit, then it will start flowing. And let's see how it dries. Okay. So I think for watercolor use, it's probably not ideal. I wouldn't say that I would try to use, if you're really doing proper watercolor work with lots of layering, definitely probably not the best option for this paper. But for a few washes, I think it's not a big deal. Let's see with gouache what happens. So I have this gouache palette, and we'll check gouache palette is sealed very well. What's inside is the Himi Mia gouache. I don't think I'm going to be doing a lot of mixing here today, so let me grab this lid and see if I can do some easy mixes. This is just the lid of one of my... Okay. So I can already tell it works a lot better with gouache, because gouache is really not as picky for the paper. You can paint on a variety of surfaces as long as it doesn't, because the gouache particle size is much larger, you don't have to worry about it seeping into the paper, and you don't have to worry about it having very good sizing either. It's a lot more versatile of a medium. It's not the same compared to watercolor, which means you have to have higher quality paper if you do watercolor work, because watercolor absorbs into the paper, while gouache, if used thickly, it is only on the top layer. Okay, we can try mixing some colors here as well. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what color I'm making, but okay. I guess the easiest demonstration would be painting, like, for example, a ball. Let's see what color to make it. Well, since I started with the blue, we can use blue to paint a ball shape. So, yeah, I'm not used to this palette yet. I grabbed the wrong color. It's not really the color I want. Oh well. Yeah, I'm brushing on this surface a lot of times, but it's still holding up. It doesn't have any issues. Okay. So I would say gouache is not bad. Blending is pretty good, although gouache has a lot less difficulty when you blend different colors together. It's really to be well expected that you would be able to blend gouache really well. It's not a difficult medium to blend, a lot more forgiveness, a lot more forgiving in terms of how to blend. And definitely it's easy to cover up the previous thing. Let's try with watercolor though. I just realized I didn't do that with watercolor. Put this away. Okay, so I've blended this together and we'll see how it looks after. There's some water here. So I dripped some water here. I'll show you. Okay, so let's take a look at everything again. So the flat wash, very good. This area is, you can see the pilling, not good to be scrubbing. This gradient, actually, this paper likes to flat out the color. There has been some previous papers I've used, not watercolor paper either, and it likes to do so. And that means it's better if you do multiple layers instead of doing one layer with the gradient, because it likes to smooth it out. Then you don't end up with a very sharp, or you don't end up with a huge contrast with the area where that's light and where it's dark. And then on this color where you can definitely tell that it won't be able to handle too many layers, but 2 layers so far, I don't see a huge problem. This blend here is okay. It's not super smooth, but I can live with it. It's also my technique. And then here, this ball, it looks fine, not a problem. And then with the gouache, definitely not an issue. And like some of these colors are pretty flat as well. It's just, it comes down to how much water I used. When I used too much water, it's not very flat. But when I used a lot more gouache, it's a lot flatter. So let me try another watercolor layer. Okay, so I've put the 3rd layer on top of there, and we'll see whether if it works. Alright, so I've dried it, and then we can take a look. So I would say it is fine. You can still layer it. It's not, the paper texture hasn't changed, but you just see these dots. Like it's either the texture of the paper or that it's pilling a little bit. Like it doesn't look necessarily the best. And then let's see the paper. You can tell that it's warped a little bit. More warping on the side where I use the watercolor compared to the other side where I use the gouache. So I would really say this paper is meant, yeah, for mixed media, but I would recommend using gouache instead of watercolor. There's one last medium that I want to test out, which is this thing here. This is an acrylic ink. So we'll see whether if it behaves any differently from the watercolor. Like I'll layer a lot of color on one side and we'll see how it dries. Very interesting. Probably because it's an ink. It's showing a similar texture to the fountain pen ink here. It's not very smooth. It's showing like little dots. Yet it still hasn't gone through the paper, but I think it's getting there. There's a huge dent here. I think if I put a lot, it might go through the paper. Now that this color is dry, it's actually not as bad as while it was wet. So I would say perhaps it's fine to be painting with this ink. So just now what you saw was the test on the mixed media paper. Next up, we're going to test on this watercolor paper. It's not 100% cotton because the 100% cotton option is extremely expensive. I didn't want to pay for that, and shipping was expensive as well. Let's take a look. So this is different from the other one where this one has a date and you can put your name. Oh my god, this paper is not very thick, so can't stand up to much abuse. Inspiration board, songs, books, places, words to live by, role model, priority, value, belief, 3 things to improve and achieve. So this is the one that I tend to see very often, which is from at the beginning there's stuff happening, whereas the mixed media one was just a pocket. And this is the watercolor paper. And this is the last page. Okay, great. So we're gonna test out this watercolor paper, but so I don't know if you can tell or not. Like the last page doesn't like to sit flat here because it's got this stopper on this side, so it doesn't tend to go through there, so it doesn't actually lay very flat. There's a gap here. Maybe I can put this underneath. Nope, that's too thick. That's too much. I have some traveler's journal. That's too many. Okay, one is good. Okay, great. Now it's flat. So I'm gonna go with the test that I did before, the same way. So first up is my Mission Gold palette. test out a few colors. So I can tell already a huge difference between the watercolor versus the normal mixed media paper. This watercolor paper is a lot more, it's got more sizing. So you have a better, so it's sitting on top of the paper for longer, which works a lot better for watercolor. I mean, that's the intended use for this paper, so I'm not surprised that it's a lot better than the mixed media. But I am surprised a little bit because I've seen online over the years a lot of people using the mixed media paper for watercolor, and the response has always been like it works really well for watercolor, even the mixed media paper. But now that I've run the comparison, I feel it's not really the case. I would pick the watercolor paper over the mixed media if you intend to be using it with watercolor, because it just lays down a lot more smooth. Okay, and then we'll do the flat wash. Okay, hopefully that's flat. And then we'll see whether if it can take some scrubbing here. And then lastly, we'll do the same test with the layering. So we'll do one large bar for yellow. Great. And then we'll do a gradient. I put too much water. Okay, and then same thing with the Pentel brush pen. Okay, so it's taking my fountain pen ink a lot better. Like it's not making any weird pattern, and it's sitting well on top, which is very nice. And this is my thick fountain pen. Very good. So far so good. Let's try the gouache again. Very good, smooth as I imagined. Do some color mixes. Definitely behaving very normally, like how watercolor is how it should. Like it definitely is a cellulose paper, so it's not going to be perfect, but you can tell there's a huge difference between this and their watercolor paper and the mixed media paper. Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to paint that same sphere again. Okay, so blending is not a problem. Let's try 2 different colors. Although I really don't think blending would be a problem for gouache on watercolor paper. Okay, and then we'll try blending. Okay, go back to the watercolor. So we're gonna try watercolor layering. So the first layer I did was this color here. Okay, so I can tell a huge difference between using the watercolor paper versus the mixed media paper for layering. Like if I have to say, this is hot press paper, and hot press paper is already not very good, just standing up to abuse, but it's behaving a lot more like a proper watercolor paper, which it is. And here, let's try scrubbing. Oh, you can tell a big difference here. See, the color lifts up, which is what you want. And then here you can also see it's a proper gradient. You can get a watercolor effect. And then lastly, I'm going to try with this acrylic ink. Sorry. I'm gonna try it with this acrylic ink. And lastly, blending with watercolor. Yep, great, it's dried, so I can put the third layer, which I put in purple. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is the page, and then here is the back. Definitely nothing happening. Warping wise, it's barely warping much, only just a very slight curvature. I didn't use that much water anyway. And this side with the gouache is also barely warping. I think the curvature was just from it not being able to sit flat. So let's take a look. Okay, so very flat wash and scrubbing works. The gradient is a huge difference between where I put lots of color and where I put water, which gives you the watercolor effect. On the layering, because it's a very smooth paper, it's not very good with layering, I feel. But overall, it's not bad. The paper has not pilled or anything. It's just the underneath layer is easy to lift up, so some of the lines you can see is not extremely sharp. But layer 2 layers is totally fine, and I wouldn't have any issue with doing layers on this paper. And the gradient is very good. Like, if you remember where I put a lot of water, this is the effect with watercolor, whereas with this other paper, you can see that it totally dried to a more smooth way, then you won't get this kind of a blooming effect. And then the fountain pen is totally sharp. There is no feathering at all. And then here, this watercolor blend is fine as well. And then the gouache, obviously it's very good. Pretty much normal for watercolor, for gouache. And then the last part with the ink, you can see that it looks fine. Right now it looks a little grainy because this is actually still wet. Once it's dried, I'm sure it will look flat, similar to on this side. And that's it for between these papers. So there's a pretty large difference, in my opinion, of which paper to use. And here's the comparison. Gouache wise, both very good, basically the same. But watercolor wise, definitely go with the watercolor paper if that's what you want to paint on it. And also if you want to use fountain pen inks. So that concludes my review of the Mossery sketchbook and the two types of paper. I'm sure their 100% cotton watercolor paper is the best for watercolor, but it's fairly expensive, so I won't be reviewing that. Alright, thank you for watching. So hopefully I'll be able to paint on these Mossery sketchbooks more in the future. They're really expensive, but they're very beautiful.